Exodus chapter 20, verse 15, you shall not steal. This is pretty straightforward. In Luther's Small Catechism, he says you should not take anything or receive it by any way that only appears right. So this is not just physically taking candy bars, but this is also tricking people into, hey, sign this thing, sign over your life savings type situation where you're scamming people out of things, you're deceiving people. You're saying, hey, I'm going to sell you this car, but it's really a lemon. You're taking their money, but you're giving them a hunk of junk. That sort of thing. Deceit, yes. And this is not just physically robbing people, but this is also tricking people out of their belongings. This is the positive aspect to you shall not steal is you should help protect your neighbor's property. You should help your neighbor take care of their property. So if somebody's breaking into your neighbor's house, call the police or run over there with a shotgun, whatever. Probably call the police unless you know your neighbor well enough. But also, let's say somebody's being taken advantage of with a like a scam or something like that. Don't just stand by, but say, hey, no. They're trying to take your money. Don't do that. Just hang up on them, that sort of thing. So we need to actively be looking out for our neighbor's well-being and our neighbor's possessions as well. So thou shalt not steal. I think it's a pretty straightforward. It's you're helping defend your neighbor's property. The fact that there's a commandment that says thou shalt not steal, I'll go there. The fact that there's a commandment that says thou shalt not steal implies that there is something, according to God, called personal property. God is not a communist. Robin, you're laughing. You know where I'm going with this. God is not a communist. People do not collectively own the world. There is actually private property. God says, this is your land. This is your car. This is your, whatever you have. This belongs to you. So it is the only way it is possible to steal from somebody is if somebody owns something. So God himself believes in private property. God is not a collectivist in that way. So because of this, it is actually wrong if you're saying, well, I want, everything should be owned by the government and nobody should own anything and all resources are shared. That goes against what God actually commands there. So you should help protect your neighbor's property. Now, there are verses in the Bible that talk about the Christian church, the early Christian church. They shared everything in common. This is not saying that nobody had personal property, but this is rather saying that every Christian was taking care of another. So if one Christian, let's say, God forbid, their house burns down, other Christians are willing to take them in and say, why don't you stay with me for a while? One Christian, their car breaks down, another Christian says, why don't you borrow my car, that sort of thing. It's common sense, but we make it more complicated than it has to be. You love your neighbor. If your neighbor is missing something, you help them out with that. Yes, sir?
Even in the Old Testament with the, what do you call it, the Passover.
Yes.
Talking about having your neighbor, if he's not able to.
Yeah, if your neighbor's not able to.
That you invite him in.
Yes, so I would say that charity, and that's what that is charity. So there's a difference between charity and government-forced collectivization. There's a difference between you take care of your neighbor because you love your neighbor and because you love God. That's commendable, that's honorable. There's a difference between that and the government coming over and saying, you will give your neighbor your stuff. One of them you're doing out of force. One of them you're doing out of love and kindness. And God loves people who are kind and generous. So this is the difference between personal private charity and government-run social programs. Now, there's a place possibly for those in society as well, but they should not replace the other. Just because you say, well, I don't need to be charitable because there's enough government organizations out there taking care of people. That's not how it works. God wants you to love your neighbor. That doesn't stop just because government starts giving out free things. Yes, ma'am?
So I don't know if somebody already asked this. You said the word social security came into my head.
Oh, yeah.
So is that not a good name?
No, Social Security, Social Security is a retirement plan, kind of. That's the government-run retirement plan. So, in other words, it's not a very well-run plan. But if you had a personal it would be like if you're putting things in your own 401k or your IRA or something like that. Just the difference is that the government is trying to provide that service for people. I personally think from experience that individuals can manage their money better than the government can. You usually know how to handle your own business better. But that's That's less the government trying to collectivize everybody's money and more the government trying to provide a service that people can get on their own. It's kind of more helicopter parenting, kind of like, okay, well, you don't know how to invest your stuff, so I'll invest for you. That's the problem, is that it becomes forced. It's obligated. Now, as a pastor, I get to opt out of that. Thankfully, that's one of the benefits of being a pastor, is I don't have to pay into the Social Security that I will never get back. I've made peace with that. Although I paid into it my entire life up until then. But yeah, that's the problem, is when you have these programs, which are good. If the government wanted to offer Social Security as an optional program, I have nothing against that. I think that probably you could handle your money better yourself. But when the government starts saying, you have to do that, it starts, I don't know if it's
open to corruption.
It's open to corruption is the problem. Yep. And because it's open to corruption, I think it's better that you, again, seventh commandment, that we're looking out for each other's resources, that you are able to look into and say, I decide to invest this way instead of that I trust these guys, not those guys. You should be able to make that call. Obviously, you can talk to your friends and stuff like that. But yeah, Social Security itself, I would not say is necessarily a violation of the seventh commandment. The government isn't. Is the government stealing from you when they collect Social Security? I guess I've never thought about that.
Social Security is going to illegals.
Oh, yeah. And then yeah. So in Romans 13, it talks about, at the very end, that you give honor to whom honor is due, taxes to whom taxes are due, that sort of thing. So I cannot stand with the pure libertarians and say taxation is theft. It's not. Taxation is in the Bible. That God says that you render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And in the end of Romans 13, if you... Yeah, they can. Okay, I'll say it like this. Taxation in principle isn't theft, but people can use taxation to steal. I'll say it like that. It's a system that God put in place for you to support the government, but there are people in the government who will use that to take advantage of others and steal from them. I could say in the same way, charity could be theft if you want to use charity, you want to give to your neighbor, and you want to provide for your neighbor, but the person is being dishonest about taking your money. They are stealing from you. You're not enabling their theft. You think you're doing the right thing, but they're taking your money even if they don't need it, or they're tricking you into taking your money. So unfortunately, if you ever just want to just go through the voicemails on the church phone. We get phone calls multiple times a week. Liz is such a saint. She deals with this. That people basically call up, and it's sometimes it's the same story. Sometimes they've got a creative story, but usually it's, hey, I'm on my way from here, back home, back east. I ran out of money on the way here. I just need gas money to drive to Phoenix. I just need airplane money to fly to Nebraska. And it's kind of the same recycled story, and either every single person is running into the same problem, or people have found out that this is a good script to use to ask for money. And they'll call up every single church in the area one at a time. They call it dialing for dollars. They call up all the churches. And the tragedy is let's say somebody comes in and they actually do need help. How can we tell the difference between somebody who genuinely needs help and the people who are trying to steal? And I don't know how to read their hearts yet. So just as a policy, we say, look, we can't. As just a policy, we don't do that. Yes, ma'am, did you have something?
Not valuable.
Okay.
You don't help them, they'll steal your if you're here.
Yeah. So yeah, we can't give you money, but we got some copper in the air conditioning up on. And they steal the copper. There we go. So yeah, so the next time somebody comes by asking for money, we just tell them, we've got an appliance that needs replacing. We say, hey, we need to replace these heaters. If you were to go up there and take them apart, insurance would take care of it. Well, that would be insurance fraud, and that would also be a violation of the seventh commandment. So let's not do that. It is. Insurance fraud is a form of stealing. So stealing is not just physically taking people's money, but it's also being deceptive about the money. Sorry. No. Oh, I thought I saw a hand. Okay. Any other questions or comments on stealing? Oh, okay. Well, good. I'm glad your hand is healing. This is an interesting. Here's an interesting one for you. Is pirating movies stealing?
Yes.
Because you're not taking something from another person. You're getting access to something that you didn't pay for, but you're not removing anything from another person. Who is can you be stolen from if you don't lose a thing? I guess it's hard to phrase. Like intellectual copyright is, what was that? Well, it would be royalties, or let's say you're a company in China and you say, well, I want to make all kinds of Mickey Mouse type stuff, but I don't want to pay Disney for that. Is intellectual property theft, is that stealing? Well, you're taking, or what if I want to steal Colonel Sanders' secret recipe and make my own chicken, and, in that case, it would be stealing, but not in the sense of physical property. I would say more in the sense of taking advantage of somebody else's hard work. So if you hire a laborer to work for you and then you don't pay them, you are stealing from them, but not taking a thing from them. You are taking their time and their work and not paying them for it. Yes, sir?
One that hits closer to home is sharing your streaming service password with your family or friends.
Oh, yeah. Sharing your streaming. And the weird thing is that different streaming services have different policies for that. Like Netflix allowed it, but then they didn't allow it, but then they did allow it, but then they allow it if it's in the same house. And you can share it with people in your household, but you can't. If they saw somebody logging on 2 states away, they would shut it down. But there's not written into law whether or not you can do that. Can I share my Amazon Prime with other people? My free delivery or... So at this point, you start getting into like civil laws. It's not. I would say that there's an answer. The answer just isn't as clear as you just robbing somebody, right, at gunpoint. But this is something to consider. This is also something to consider. I would say, in the same way that you shall not steal, you shall not take things. If you want to, the positive way to enforce this is. Let's say you go to a restaurant and the server does a really, really excellent job of service. They recommend the right food, they take care of you. It would be a positive example of fulfilling the 7th commandment to say, I believe that they deserve a tip, that I want to tip them, I believe that they worked hard enough. This would be a way that we say, this is how I can love my neighbor. Following the 7th commandment. So if you believe that somebody did a really good job on something, it is honoring God but to honor them and say, look, you did an excellent job for this. You went above and beyond. I'm going to give you a positive review. I'm going to give you a tip, that sort of thing. I'm not saying, I'm not going to get into the legality of whether or not tipping should be enforced by law. I really think that should be, do you believe that this person went above and beyond the service? If so, it's a good thing to reward them. It's like sending thank you notes, which I am in the process of doing. It is happening, but there's a lot of thank you notes to write and a lot of addresses, and they're all done by hand. There's like 100 and something of them. Yeah, yes, and then we've got the other wedding coming up too, and there's a lot of thank you notes. But it is appropriate to acknowledge people for the hard work that they do, whether it's a thank you, whether it's a good review or recommendation. I mean, I was talking about when we had to buy a car recently, and I asked, somebody says, what dealerships have you talked to that are reputable? That's a good thing to say. These people treated me fairly. And I could tell you, I used to have a mechanic shop. Mechanic shops are notorious for, you've got a guy. If you've got a good mechanic shop, you hold on to that for dear life because there's so many out there that'll take advantage of you. Recommend them to other people. It's a good thing to do. Got a good doctor, got a good hairstylist, whatever. Okay, so that's a lot in thou shalt not steal. Exodus 20, verse 16, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Ooh, this is the sin the internet was invented for. Now, there's other sins the internet is invented for, but this sin in particular, not just the internet, but I would say media in general. This is any newspaper, any radio, any TV show makes it so easy for you to bear false witness against your neighbor. Now, in the 10 Commandments, in the small catechism, Luther says, let me actually look it up just because I don't want it. The specific, because it's not just lying about your neighbor. It's 100 and before the divine service, I think. Unless somebody has the 8th commandment explanation memorized, we should fear and love God, that we do not tell lies about his neighbor, hurt his something. I got all mixed up. Slander him, hurt his reputation. But explain things, yeah, explain everything in the kindest way. I want to get the list specifically because I think Luther does a really good job of all the ways that we can violate the 8th commandment. And this is not Luther adding to the commandment, rather this is Luther bringing together a bunch of different texts. Okay, small catechism is in the 300s, 321. Yes, the 8th commandment, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. What does this mean? We should fear and love God, that we do not tell lies about our neighbor, betray him, slander him, hurt his reputation, but defend him, speak well of him, and explain everything in the kindest way. Yes, ma'am.
Does that mean not telling people bad things about them, like withholding? Like defending them maybe means not making it known to others that they're slime-ball or whatever.
Yeah.
Generally, so I mean,
Do you withhold
truthful
truthful?
things that are not good things about them?
Sometimes. And now, if you're curious about that, then usually it's better to err on the side of I don't want to gossip, even if it's true, because gossip can be true, but I don't want to gossip. And I'll explain that in 1 second. Yes, ma'am.
William Blake says, the truth told with bad intent is worse than any lie you can invent.
That's perfect. Yes. So you can violate the 8th commandment even by telling the truth, hurting their reputation. So let's say you've got an embarrassing secret about somebody that it doesn't need to be public. Well, they got this horrible rash or something like that. It's not nobody else's business about this. But it's true. So can I tell people about this horrible, every time they sneeze, it's their nostrils empty out snot. Just like this horrible, embarrassing thing. Yeah, it's true, but it can still be gossip. Yes, ma'am. Right. So what I would say, so let's say you've got the bad mechanic. You don't know for a fact that they're, like maybe they're just bad at their job. You don't know for a fact, you don't know for a fact their intentions. If you're leaving a review on their mechanic site, stick with, don't try to impugn their reputation. Say, they're a horrible person, they're trying to cheat me out of my money, that kind of thing. Just say, I didn't get the service that I requested. They recommended a bunch of services that I know for a fact that I didn't need. I would recommend. So there's a way, explain everything in the kindest way. Sometimes you have to say bad things about people. Politicians. You could say, okay, well, here's this politician and I can't even think of a good thing to say about him or her. How do you explain something important like that lovingly? We say, I would recommend not voting for this politician for this reason, this reason, and this reason. Really, when you get into the realm of something public, it's different to say, look, here's a quote. George Washington said he wouldn't chop down a cherry tree or something like that. Here's a public statement that they said. That's not a violation of the 8th commandment to say, no, you said this publicly. More a violation of the 8th commandment would be, I met with them privately. I cannot verify this thing that I'm going to claim about them, but I'm going to claim this thing publicly. And this is talked about in other places in Scripture where it says that you need 2 or 3 witnesses. You need to be able to back up your story. Even if it's true, you could end up looking like a fool you could end up looking like you're trying to hurt their reputation by claiming something about them that you can't prove. So the 8th commandment, you shouldn't intentionally go out there and try to hurt people's reputation because you can take their property, 7th commandment, you can damage them physically, 5th commandment, but something also great and valuable you can take away from somebody is their reputation, and that's the 8th commandment. In the Bible, I was trying to remember, it's somewhere in Proverbs where it says something along the lines of there's 3 things that God hates, a lying tongue, or whatever. There's like a list. I should have them memorized. I should memorize Proverbs. But in particular, he says something. There are like 3 things that God hates, and one of them is listed as a lying tongue. And we kind of treat 8th commandment like that's a minor, because you're not killing anybody, you're not taking their physical property. Liars, beggars, and thieves. Well, you can. Did you find it? Okay, let me see. Let me see if I can find it. I'll ask. Oh, Wizard of Oz. Let me see. Bible verse, 3 things. 6:16 through 19. Yes, that's it. What does that say, please?
It kind of cuts up. Oh, here it goes.
Oh, yep.
Examples are haughty eyes,
Yep,
pride,
yep.
a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood.
So interesting. So hands that shed innocent blood. So you'd be like a murderer, and God puts that in the same level as haughty eyes and a lying tongue. So this is absolutely something that God takes really seriously, even if we don't. Well, I didn't hurt him. I just tweeted about him. Well, no, you can absolutely destroy somebody's rate. You can make it so it's really hard for people to get a job. You can ruin their relationships with others. You can absolutely ruin somebody. You can do usually more damage to a person publicly with slander than you can do privately on your own. Yes, ma'am.
Just all the internet bullying, like putting people's heads on other bodies and making a story out that it was you that did this.
Yeah, yep.
You know, like kids in high school.
Oh, yeah. And this is something that has to be taught to kids as well, because kids are taught not to steal, not to get into fights, but also you need to bridle your tongue. Children need to be taught that as well. They need to be taught that it's a very serious thing when, let's say, hypothetically, you've got toddlers, and hypothetically, they like to lie about what the other person did to get them in trouble all the time. Hypothetically, if that happened, the parent should definitely say, you are not allowed to lie about your brother. You're not allowed to lie about your sister. I know that that's not true. We have a policy at the house. You know how you probably did this, I did this when I was growing up, how if you're saying naughty words and stuff like that, your parents wash your mouth out with soap? It's still effective, by the way. They still make soap. Another good reason to wash someone's mouth out with soap might be that they're using their mouth to slander. They're using their mouth to lie about their siblings. They're using their mouth to tell things that aren't true. You hate it, yeah. Well, my parents used liquid soap one time. Oh, that was horrible. It's more effective than spankings a lot of the time because it's a lingering discontent. But in any case, bearing false witness against your neighbor, yes, this is everything. And then explaining everything in the kindest way, this can be hard because when you understand something and somebody else doesn't, it's easy to say, well, this guy's just dumb, this idiot. I don't have the crayons or the patience to explain this to you. But we need to approach situations as charitably as possible. Charity in terms of not money, but in terms of how you love your neighbor. You just say, okay, you said this thing which is incorrect. I'm going to assume that maybe you were misinformed. I'm going to explain something to you like that rather than, you liar! You lied on purpose! You're trying to, destroy the reputation of so-and-so. Again, this is really easy to do on the internet when somebody posts something wrong, something that is obviously wrong, that you know is wrong, and a quick Google search would show is wrong. Rather than attacking them, say, oh, I see you're a little bit behind in the information here. Let me help you out. Here's actually what happened. So as responding with, here's actually what happened versus, I'm going to attack you. You're the worst person in the world and you hate, and this is why you're lying about this incident or this person. So explain everything in the kindest way. Actively sticking up for people that maybe you don't know too well. If you've got, and I do this with pastors, if I've interacted with pastors at least a little bit before, I'm more than confident usually to say, I talked to that guy, every conversation I had with him was fantastic. He seems to me like a really smart pastor, a really friendly guy. I highly recommend you check out whatever. I'll say that about a person that I've had 2 conversations with, and I'm not trying to lie about them, but I am assuming the best about them, especially based on what I know about them, what my interactions with them have been. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I talk about someone and say, hey, this guy's great. Our conversation was fantastic. And it turns out, oh, he's a tinfoil hat conspiracy. He's got these wild ideas. That happened one time where I was saying, oh, this guy, we had a great conversation. And this guy has a lot of really, really good ideas, but he has also some really not sinful ideas, but really bizarre kind of theology pulled out of a hat type ideas where I'm like, I wouldn't agree with that because it sounds like you just made that up. But everything else you said was correct. But I would still I would try to find a positive way, even if there's something wrong with I went to the mechanic, keep picking on mechanics. I went to the mechanic, they were recommending services I didn't need. They were nice, they were friendly, they welcomed me, they were in a comfortable waiting room. Just wasn't for me, for these reasons. Try to, you try to put the best construction on things. You don't have to lie. You don't have to say people are good when they're bad, but you try to put the best construction on things. That's kind of a good way to look at it. Yes, ma'am.
What about family members?
Ooh.
Like,
Family members.
they come over to visit you,
Mhm.
and you're talking in conversation, and they are not speaking the truth to you.
Yes.
And then they leave, and then just say, me and my daughter speak about the conversation.
Yeah.
Is that being bad towards that person, and especially
Right.
if we bring it up to them later?
I don't think so. I think a lot of it depends on your intent. Is your intent to hurt their reputation? No. Your intent is to try to get to the truth. And I know exactly the situations you're talking about. Where you have family and they'll say something, and I've got family who lives in California, and all that implies. And they'll come over and they will say things, and I sometimes disagree with them to their face, and sometimes I talk with my father or somebody afterwards, and I say, no, this was wrong for this reason, this reason, this reason. Now, that's not the same thing as you jumping on Facebook and saying, oh, my sister just came over and she's such a crazy person and I can't believe how wrong and dumb she is. Like, So if your goal is trying to hurt their reputation, that would be a violation. If your goal is trying to spread slander about them, gossip, that would be bad. But if you should have conversations about the truth. You should absolutely say, they said these things, I don't like that they said it. It's not true. And then it's good that you talk to them afterwards, because it's easy to talk behind somebody's back. It's hard to talk to somebody and say, you hurt me with these words. This is what I perceive from these words. And sometimes we're wrong. Sometimes I'll have a conversation with somebody. I said, you said this thing, and this is kind of what I felt you meant. Is that what you meant? And they'll say, no, that came out completely wrong. I actually meant this other thing that isn't insulting or horribly wrong or whatever. So it's another thing is you approach conversations. If you have a disagreement with somebody, if you have an argument with somebody, approach the conversation as though, give them the opportunity to say, I misspoke. I was wrong in how I didn't mean that. I meant this other thing instead. Allow that grace. Because imagine, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If you said something and people took it the wrong way, you would much rather prefer they came up to you and said, I heard you say this. Is this what you meant? Did you mean this thing or did you mean something else? I would much rather have somebody say that to me, especially if it's like a sermon or something I say online or something. People come up and say, you said this thing. It kind of sounds like you're saying this other thing. And a lot of times I'll say, no, I just put my foot in my mouth. I did not mean that at all. I misspeak more frequently than I speak, it seems. Yes. So because of that, because we all misspeak, we say things that are taken the wrong way, we should extend that grace to others and say, this is what it sounded like you were saying. It hurt my feelings, or it sounded wrong, or whatever. Is that what you meant? Yes, ma'am.
I think the internet and all Facebook, all this stuff, it makes it really difficult because it's not face to face.
It's not face to face. Isn't that interesting that we create barriers? It's easier to write about somebody. It's easier to talk about somebody than talk to someone.
Yeah.
It's easier to gossip than it is to ask somebody directly. And according to the 8th commandment, we should be trying to seek out and say, hey, I heard this thing about you. I heard you say this thing. Can you explain that a little bit more? And sometimes they clear something up, and sometimes they double down and you say, oh, okay, well, then my perception about you was correct. Yes, sir.
Is there anything instructive in the first chapter of 1 Corinthians where Paul is dealing with essentially gossip about what's going on in the church? There's several things that he touches on.
Where he says, I've heard these things going on, or
Divisions and...
which verse is that? Because I think I know what you're talking about, but it's not 11 or?
verse 10.
Verse 10. Okay, I thought it was 10 or 11. Okay, let me see. I appeal to you, my brothers, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree that there be no divisions among you, but you be united in the same mind and the same judgment. For it has been reported to me by Chloe's people that there is quarreling among you, my brothers, which I mean, each one of you says, I follow Paul, I follow Apollos, I follow Cephas, I follow Christ. Is Christ divided, et cetera, et cetera. So, yes. So this is one of the reasons why we really want to focus on unity, why we believe the same thing. This is part of the closed communion policy that we have, is that the Bible regularly says Christians should be on the same page, but at the same time, Christians regularly aren't on the same page. He's saying that these people here are trying to divide themselves by identity of saying, I'm a Pauline Christian, I'm an Apollosian Christian, I'm a Christian, I'm a Cephas Christian, that sort of thing. They're trying to create divisions here. It's my guys versus your guys. This is a really common way to take it. Whereas in Christianity, we shouldn't be looking for division. Lutherans, do you know where the term Lutheran came from? Who started the term Lutherans? Why don't we just call ourselves Christians or Catholics, right? No. What was that? Eck? It might have been Eck. So it was the Crusaders. No, okay, so the ones that first started calling us Lutherans were not the Lutherans, and it wasn't Luther. In fact, Luther hated the idea. He says, no, do not call yourselves Lutherans. You are Christians, you follow Christ. I am not the one you're following the one who died on the cross. You're following Christ. In fact, you can call yourselves Catholic because you're still the Catholic Church. You're the Catholic Church of the Augsburg Confession. The Augsburg Confession defines what you believe, but you are the Catholic, meaning universal church. You are the ancient church. You're not a new church. You're the old one. You're the first one. You are the same church Christ created. But the opponents of Luther, specifically the Roman Catholics, and it might have been Eck, I'm not sure who else, but the polemicists they broke the 8th commandment to try to slander the Lutherans, and they said, you are not Christians, you are not Catholic, you are Lutherans. You follow after this Luther guy as if he's your prophet. Same way we would say the Calvinists follow Calvin, the Lutherans follow Luther. This sort of thing to diminish the Christian faith into, you're just following this crazy drunken German monk. That's what they were trying to. So don't even look at the things that Luther says. You guys are worshiping Luther instead of Christianity. So originally it was the Catholics who called the Lutherans Lutheran. And Luther hated this at first. But this is why it changed. The Lutherans would call themselves Reformed Catholic. They were the Catholic Church of the Reformation, the Catholic Church of the Augsburg Confession. The Reformation defined, reformed, brought it back to the ancient Christian church. It's not a new church. But there were other groups that would come on later on who would call themselves Reformed, or Reformed Christians, or Reformed Catholic. And Luther called them the enthusiasts. This would be Zwingli, this would be kind of like the Anglicans, the Reformed Baptists are later kind of come from there. All these other groups that come out of after the Reformation, not out of the Reformation, but after the Reformation. So John Calvin, Ulrich Zwingli, people like that, they started calling themselves, well, we're Reformed Christians too. And Luther says, no, we have nothing to do with these people. They are heretics. Cast them out of the church. Luther famously said, I would rather drink the pure blood of Christ with the Pope than drink wine with the enthusiasts. So Luther, at the end of his life, hated the Protestants more than he hated the Romans. And he was frustrated that these other people tried to jump on and hitch their wagon to his star, the star of the Reformation, and say, well, we're going to start our own church. And Luther says, no, we're not starting a church. We're going back to the way the church was always. This is why we quote the Bible. This is why we quote the church fathers. This is why we quote all of these things, because we are the ancient Christian church. So here's the problem, is the Lutherans were then calling ourselves Reformed Catholics or Reformed Christians, and this new group was also calling themselves Reformed Catholics and Reformed Christians. And Luther says, okay, well, we've got nothing to do with these guys, we're Lutherans. So the Lutherans adopted the title of Lutheran begrudgingly because other people were using the title of Reformed. Originally, though, the term Lutheran was a slur. It was derogatory. It was, you guys are followers of Luther, not of Christ. And this is the frustration about the divisions. We shouldn't have to call ourselves Lutherans. Everybody should call what we believe Christianity. That's what it should be. But because there are divisions, we have to acknowledge them. We have to say, look, I'm going to call myself Lutheran just so it makes sense, but really what we believe is what Christians believe. We are Christians. We are the ancient Christian church. I don't remember if that answered a question. I might have just gotten way sidetracked. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you know, when Christ was around, they called it the way. Why,
They called it the way, yes.
why didn't that take off?
It did for a while. They called it the way. I think, is it in Acts? I think in Acts they started calling themselves Christians. So they called themselves followers of the way or the way. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And so there was a lot of terms that Christians used for themselves. Just for one reason or another, Christians stuck. Followers of the way. You can call yourself a follower of the way. It's the same thing. It's just a different title. I don't know. It's just, I think it's because Christians define our faith by who Christ is, what Christ did, what Christ taught. Those things. So we say we are followers of Christ in a way that other religions follow the Buddha. Other religions follow Muhammad. They were called Mohammedans before the term Muslim kind of caught on. But yeah, so if you want to call yourself followers of the way, yep. Children of Abraham, you can call yourself too. There's all kinds of names for Christians. With that, we are out of time. Let's close with the doxology. Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him.